I'm going to tell you what we're going to talk about. We're going to go through the laundry list. First, some good news. Gallup poll just came out, folks, and within 6 months of this incompetent, horrific DUI hire administration, Donald Trump's signature strong point, his strength, is now his weakness. The Gallup poll is not good when it comes to immigration because it seems like people don't like the Gestapo terrorizing them, Allison. And as that's happening, we also have I think, some good news. We have to lower the bar because the bar is in hell with Mahmud Khalil, who was detained for 104 days for no reason whatsoever, without any criminal charges, simply for being brown-skinned and advocating for Palestinians, is now suing the administration for $20 million. We also have the Epstein crack-up within MAGA, folks, and like I predicted, and I've been saying for a while, because Allison and me are masochists, this is a big story. This is a fissure within MAGA that should be exploited. Oh, I don't know, by an opposition party. But we found out that Dan Bongino and Axios just reported an hour ago that Bongino took a day off from work after a White House clash with Bondi over the handling of the Epstein files. And they're going after it. It hasn't stopped, folks. They're eating each other. Alex Jones had a meltdown in his car. Tucker went against it. Roseanne went against it. Andrew Schultz, one of these, MAGA alpha comedians, completely ripped Trump over this on his show last night. So we're going to be talking about this stuff. And as always, Allison has the juice. And then also, the fact that Senator Tim Scott and Human Concrete Tim Homan are doubling down and giving you a sneak peek of what ICE Gestapo will do to us, those quotes. And I'm sure there's some other stuff that I missed, but we're going to go through it all. We're going to spin the wheel, spin the wheel. People. Allison, where do you want to start?
I want to start with, I call it better news instead of good news these days, because
I like that.
It always seems to be born of terrible news. So I want to start with Mahmud Khalil, because this story is born of awful news. But the better news is that now he's dropped a $20 million loss on the government for malicious prosecution, false arrest, and defamation. And I hope that he wipes the floor with them. And we'll see what happens. We'll see what a jury does. But that's where we are. We'll also see if the Department of Justice is going to obviously rep itself and the administration in that. But that's, I think, where we should start, because that is some better news.
Oh, I agree with you completely. And, folks, we try to connect the dots. I want to remind everyone that when it came to Donald Trump and when it comes to Republicans and the fear mongering, because also now Superman is the bad guy, we have to talk about that later. The core of white supremacy is cruelty. It's also very stupid and self-destructive, and they need to create a boogie person. And the convenient boogie person for this administration were two groups in particular. It was a transgender community and undocumented immigrants. And then they decided, you know what? Let's crack down on pro-Palestinian activists. And sadly, they did it with some bipartisan support. So they're like, okay, we got these three groups that will make into a terror threat, a foreign threat, right? Extremist. Let's promote some conspiracy theories about all of them, right? Yada, yada, yada. And the majority, oh, don't worry, we're going to go after these bad guys. And what we kept saying is, well, first they'll come for the undocumented, then they'll crack down on the pro-Palestinian students, and then they're going to come for you. And people said, nah, they won't. And then they went after Mahmoud Khalil. And they're like, oh, we could just straight up kidnap this guy, throw him into detention without any due process. Let's now just kidnap, Rumeysa Ozturk, a 30-year-old grad who's Turkish, who co-wrote an op-ed in the middle of the street. What's going to happen? Oh, you know what? Let's now just unleash ICE in L.A. What's going to happen? You know what? Let's have ICE just manhandle our elected officials, like a senator, or like aim guns at Maxine Waters. What's going to happen? Let's just throw ICE, now in Florida, and have them with National Guard and Marines, and it escalates. And Mahmoud Khalil, right? We were like, we have no idea if this guy's ever going to get out. But you saw the pressure that was put on Allison. First and foremost, I want to connect the dots. I want to give it to you. Senator Van Hollen. I always want to, keep memories fresh. While Democrats, I'm sorry, I have to be honest here, were quiet on this because immigration was Donald Trump's strong point. Senator Van Hollen, one senator from Maryland, because Kilmar Abrego Garcia is from Maryland, decided to go by himself all the way to El Salvador to this friggin' CCOT, foreign prison, said, I'm not going to leave until I get proof of life. He was in the news. He got proof of life. He stayed there. Donald Trump, within 2 weeks, went negative double digits on Kilmar Abrego Garcia. Then you saw Democrats go and visit this Louisiana detention center. A week later, they visited Mahmud Khalil, Rumeza Ostrick. Slowly but surely, Rumeza Ostrick was released. Badr Khan Suri was released, who was just kidnapped here 2 weeks ago. And then finally, the big one. Mahmoud Khalil was released, and he goes straight to Columbia University, like the baller that he is, and starts protesting again. And as of last night, we just found out that he is dropping a $20 million lawsuit against Trump for false imprisonment, malicious prosecution, and smearing his name. Allison, I give it to you.
Yeah, no, I think this is fantastic that he's doing this because I think he speaks for a lot of people. We have to remember that not everybody can afford six-figure lawyers to file lawsuits like this, and so a lot of times these lawsuits, like the Abrego case, the JGG case, the Mahmoud Khalil case, they are representing so many more people who maybe don't have that voice or those means to do that. And the DHS said they were going to do this. Do you remember when they put out a tweet that said, we're going to stop everything at the border. We're going to stop trafficking. We're going to stop crime. We're going to stop ideas. And then they quickly deleted that, very unconstitutional and frightening tweet. But, the internet is forever, DHS. I'm not sure if Kristi Noem is aware. But they told us that that's what they were going to do. And then they started kidnapping people and disappearing them, putting them incommunicado where people didn't know where they were for a long time, until the, lawyers were able to get in touch with them. In ICE custody for ideas, for, Ozturk writing her op-ed, Mahmoud Khalil protesting, regardless of what they're protesting. Now, I agree, but, regardless of what the protest is, First Amendment is First Amendment.
That's right.
I remember being torn apart and very upset when the Supreme Court allowed Westboro Baptist to exercise their free speech within 25 feet or outside 25 feet of Marine funerals, right? And, I'm sitting there looking at that saying, this is awful, but that, free speech is protected and it should be protected. But when you start coming at it from one side and you do it for political reasons and you're arresting people for ideas, then we start getting into really, really dark territory. And so I'm very interested to see how this lawsuit goes. And I'm very glad that he's bringing it because, like I said, as a sexual assault victim who never got justice, E. Jean Carroll spoke for me. Robbie Kaplan and E. Jean Carroll. I got a little bit of justice by proxy. You know what I mean? So this is what I'm hoping to see. Plus, that sets precedent, and that all rolls downhill to other people to protect them. So I'm 100% behind this, and I can't wait to see where it goes.
I hope he gets everything, but I know he probably won't get a penny because this administration and regime is so vindictive and so cruel. When they even admit mistakes such as the kidnapping and detention and deportation of Kilmar Abrego Garcia, again, this administration admitted they sent him an error. You see what they're doing right now. They're smearing him, defaming him, calling him like a sex trafficker, and right now he's in detention, and they've trumped up charges against him. All they should do is release him. Just release him. That's what any other administration would have done. They would have, thrown some underling under the bus, invited Kilmar Abrego Garcia to the White House, had a beer with them. Donald Trump doesn't drink beer, so I don't know, a Diet Coke. He can't have tacos anymore because taco is associated with weakness and an acronym for Trump always chickens out. So I don't know, have a burrito. Do a photo op and get some, some positive news for like a day or two. But they're so cruel. Folks, they're so cruel that they refuse to admit their own mistake, which they admitted, and now they have kept Kilmar Abrego Garcia. So imagine what they'll do to Mahmoud Khalil. They'll give $5 million to Ashley Babbitt's family. Ashley Babbitt, the completely radicalized QAnon nut who joined the violent insurrection. They gave $5 million of your taxpayer dollars to her family in a wrongful death suit. And Donald Trump has said he's open to compensating the 1,600 insurrectionists, including the violent insurrectionists that he pardoned. But will Mahmoud Khalil get his 20 million? I hope he gets 40.
Well, the good news is it's not exactly up to the government. It's up to a jury.
Yeah. So let's see, inshallah. Let's see. Some other good news before we get to the bad news, because we usually just talk about all the horrific news. But I think this is good news, and this is why the framing of this conversation is the way it is. The fact that the people might finally be rising up and saying enough. It's only been 6 months, folks. And I want to remind you that this was a core tenet of Donald Trump's 2024 campaign. At the RNC, you had these Christians with their big crosses with the deport them, deport them, deport them signs, right? This was his strong point. So strong that Democrats decided to vote alongside Republicans for the Laken Riley Act, right? Not say a word because, oh no, we're weak on immigration, right? We can't stand up for immigration reform. We can't stand up for undocumented immigrants. That's too woke. That makes us look weak. So let's vote for the Laken Riley Act and say nothing. And then you had others like Van Hollen and Mamdani who said, nah, let's try something else and actually, stand up for folks. 6 months. 6 months of Donald Trump empowering ICE. ICE, thanks to the big, beautiful bill from hell, now has an infusion of $180 billion, which will make ICE this bigger and more funded than the militaries of foreign countries. As a result of this bill from hell, we get permanent tax cuts for the rich. Medicaid is gutted, but ICE will have 10,000 agents, and ICE will have its budget will make it the 16th largest army or the most well-funded army in the world. And how are they using ICE? Unleashing terror in LA, in Florida, 7-Elevens, families, right? And we're going to talk about some terrible news about what we saw in Ventura City and also the Puerto Rican Museum. But as a result, I want you to get your thoughts on this poll that came out today. New Gallup poll. I mean, I'm rarely stunned anymore, Allison. Trump's approval on immigration, his strong suit, right? Positive, 35. Negative, 62. Right now, in America, a record high approval of immigration, 79%. 78% of Americans support a pathway to citizenship, plus 8 points from last year. 30% want decrease in immigration, negative 25 from last year. I mean, this is a remarkable swing in 6 months. Allison, what do you attribute it to?
Pretty simple. I had seen somebody on MSNBC say the most important civic unit in the nation is the neighbor. And I think a lot of people had been told and believed that what Trump promised on immigration was that he was going to go after criminals. He was going to go after drug traffickers. He was going to go after murderers and bad guys and human traffickers. And what has ended up happening now, because of Stephen Miller, one of the two auto pens in this administration, the other being Russ Vought, right? Stephen Miller said you have to get 3,000 arrests a day.
Yep.
And now, so that means they have to go after non-criminal immigrants. And, people, I don't think a lot of people know that being in this country undocumented is not a felony. It is not a crime. It's a civil issue, right? Like it's like a misdemeanor. It's not a felony. It's not a crime. And so when people see, we saw it here, we've seen it in LA, we've seen it in tons of cities across the country. You're out to dinner with your family and you've got kids around and people, and the ICE rolls in dressed like they're in Fallujah.
Yep.
Like they're going house to house on raids, comes in with flashbangs and smoke grenades and rubber bullets to arrest and detain the guy who's been, cooking at your favorite restaurant for the last 20 years, or what we saw in Ventura, which we'll talk about in a minute. That really pisses people off.
Yep.
Really. And so now we've seen this huge explosion of these community activists getting together, for example, forming groups, going to their local school boards and their local schools and administrators and saying, I want a policy about ICE that you will not let them in this school within, and I want that policy. We want that policy. We demand it from you within a couple of weeks. And that's happening in the service industry. It's happening in farming. It's happening in school districts. People hate this. And that was Trump's big gamble. Now, my question is, does Trump care? We talk a lot. We talked a lot about this in his first term. He had to get elected again in his first term. He doesn't have to do that now, regardless of how he leaves office, right? or whether he leaves office. He doesn't.
I don't think he will, but we'll talk about that later also.
Point being, whether he leaves office, shuffles off this mortal coil, or illegally retains power, he doesn't have to be voted for again. He doesn't have to win another election. So whether or not he cares, like back in the first administration, he wanted to completely get rid of veterans benefits. And his advisors were like, sir, you have to run again and get elected again, and you will not if you do this. And so he stopped and put it off. And now he's doing that, again. He's doing that here in his second term when he doesn't have to be elected again. So I don't know how much he cares, but what's going to be interesting to see is how much Congress cares. They do have to get elected again. But right now, it seems like, on the Republican side, because we do need Republicans if we're going to impeach or if we're going to pass a bill preventing this or if we're going to stop this, what's going on with the Gestapo in any way. We need Republicans to do that. It has to be Republicans. They're in the majority. And we see the opposite. They want to fund, like you said, the 16th largest military in the world now, the Gestapo, ICE.
It's wild. It's wild.
It's hugely unpopular. And so I'm not sure why they aren't worried about their jobs, but they don't seem to be.
They don't seem to be worried. And the reason why I think they don't seem to be worried, and we'll talk about this later, is because I don't think they're going to leave. And go ahead, all the right wingers who watch this, you made a bunch of articles lumping me, Jim Acosta, Carville, and Joy Reid as far left conspiratorial loons. But I said, I don't know, receipts, because I remember there was something called a violent insurrection, Allison. And I remember that Donald Trump picked up the phone, called Secretary of State of Georgia, a Republican, Brad Raffensperger, and said, find him the votes. Just enough votes to let him win Georgia. Find him the votes. Remember that? I also know that he pardoned the 1,600 violent insurrectionists. I know that the coup was successful. I know that he has completely unqualified people who have promised revenge. I know right now that he's engaging in election reform. I know that Texas has, instead of focusing on the flooding in central Texas, they're engaging in gerrymandering. I know that election reform will be gerrymandering and perhaps removing people like Brad Raffensperger, who had their loyalty, even Mike Pence, loyalty to the Constitution, with yes men who might just, find voter fraud. And then also with the Gestapo and connecting the dots, if you have masked armed agents who are accountable to no one, unleashing terror at the behest of one of the two autopens, Stephen Miller, who claims without any evidence that we're under invasion, we're not, and that we're under war, we are not. And that's why he has invoked the Alien Enemies Act. What will stop Donald Trump? I don't want to give him ideas, from invoking the Insurrection Act and saying, oh, I don't know, maybe before 2026 or 2028, if it seems like, and I think likely, Republicans will lose the House and maybe the Senate, because it's only been 6 months and they're underwater, right? He says, you know what? We're under invasion. I'm the commander in chief, and the power vested in me by the Supreme Court. I have to protect America. And as such, I have to declare martial law and punt the elections. But don't worry, they'll come back. And, oh, you're uprising? Well, now I'll unleash my ICE agents, and I'll do what I want to do in the first administration, which is shoot protesters in the knee if it wasn't for Mark Esper. I'm just putting it out there, Allison. Do you think I'm crazy? If you do, let me know.
No, I don't. We were also worried about this in the first term, and there was a violent insurrection. I remember the Daily Beans that came out on January 5th, and Dana, my co-host, was like, well, I don't know what he's going to do tomorrow, but I don't know how many impeachable offenses he can commit in the next 15 days. And then lo and behold. And, we were assured by Mark Milley, Joint Chiefs of Staff, the military is not getting involved. And so we knew there wouldn't be a military coup, right? Because the military was still in pretty regular, adult hands at that point. But he did unleash that. And the FBI knew it was coming and still kind of, I don't know what happened, to drop the ball on communications and intelligence with the Secret Service, and all their text messages disappeared. But, we can rehash what happened on January 6th. I'm worried about 2029.
Yep.
But yeah, I don't know what would stop him from doing that. He fired Mark Esper because he wasn't willing to invoke the Insurrection Act. And now he has Keg Stand, who will do whatever he wants him to do. So it's rather frightening. I don't know the thing is that we used to have this thing called the law that the Supreme Court generally interpreted properly. We know they've been trying to tear down, the Reconstruction Amendments forever, and they're super into white supremacy as a court in general. But we could sort of rely on the law. And I feel like we can't do that anymore after they granted him immunity and, ignored the Section 3 of the 14th Amendment in Anderson and all these other things that have come out from the Supreme Court that are against decades of precedent, like the Dobbs decision that overturned Roe. So when you talk about what if he invokes the Insurrection Act, my first thought is, oh, well, somebody sues and then we get the elections back on. But that ends up in the hands of the Supreme Court, this Supreme Court. And we're kind of being ruled by 6 robed oligarchs right now.
Yep. I agree with you. I was just nodding my head because when I say it, people are like, that crazy brown Muslim who wants to implement Sharia and replace peanut butter and jelly with falafel. But when Allison said it sounds like, yeah, Allison's smart. I agree with you. I think this is just a failure of imagination. I mean, how much more you can't do that will people take? Like, how many more times are you willing to be Charlie Brown who lets Lucy pick up the football? It's been 10 years, folks. 10 years. And if we don't go down the laundry list because you and me are nerds and keep the receipts, the violent insurrection, that's all you got to say. January 6th. A man who's capable of that, if it seems like he's in trouble, if it seems like his party's in trouble, if I'm Donald Trump, I hate giving him ideas, folks. I'm telling you, if I'm Donald Trump with this Supreme Court, with this House, with this Senate, with these people who are my reeks, I'm never leaving. If I'm Donald Trump, I will never leave. I will leave only as I die. There's no reason for me to leave. I'll gamble and say, I got this. I think I got it. I hope he's not listening, but you know what? They've already thought of this.
You don't have to worry about that. He already knows about this idea because Stephen Miller knows about this idea. You're not giving anybody any ideas. But I agree with you. I think the only way he's leaving the White House is feet first. But back to the Stephen Miller thing, he knows this. He's talked about suspending the writ of habeas corpus.
There you go.
Which should terrify everyone. We're 3/4 of the way through the Then They Came for Me poem. Because, when you think about no due process, ability to deport people to third countries, we're under invasion, invoking martial law, everything like that. How long before Antifa is declared
there you go.
Domestic terrorist group, which is all of us, right? Anybody who, if he can say that somebody with a clock tattoo is a member of Tren de Aragua in order to invoke to deport somebody to a third country under the Alien Enemies Act, what's to stop him from saying somebody with a Mueller tattoo is clearly a member of Antifa and doesn't deserve due process and can be sent to a third-party country without due process. And that's what was going on in the Abrego hearing today in front of Judge Sinise. She's really pissed at the government. She's about at her wit's end, saying, look, if he's released from criminal custody because he's been deemed not a danger to his community, he was not a danger to his community before he was disappeared to El Salvador because he was walking free at liberty in Maryland while he was going through his immigration hearings and things like that. If you can, if he's released on July 16th, because there's a hearing on July 16th about whether or not to revoke his bail for his criminal proceedings, then the government can't make any guarantees to her that you won't just scoop him up and without notice put him on a plane to South Sudan. And they're like, well, we're telling you we're not going to. And she's like, well, I'm telling you, you've done this multiple times.
Yep.
So I am inclined to put in a temporary restraining order to hold off you removing him from the continental United States for 72 hours after he's released. And she'll give a decision sometime between now and July 16th when that hearing is in Judge Crenshaw's courtroom in Tennessee for his criminal bail, because Trump wants to revoke his bail. They want to keep him. It's just the dumbest thing. The DOJ wants to keep him in jail because we're going to send him to trial. He's going to go to trial and pay for his crimes, his whatever.
His non-existent crime.
But at the same time, a judge said, no, he's not a danger to society. So the Bail Reform Act says that he can be out on bail. And they go, well, then in that case, we want to file a motion to revoke his bail because if you let him out, ICE will come in and take him away and we won't be able to take him to trial. And she's like, you work for the same person. Like, why can't you stop yourself from doing what you don't want yourself to do? It's just
because they don't want to. They don't want to. That's, folks, we have to underline the racist agenda and cruelty. I'm so glad you're talking about Stephen Miller. I always bring him up because I said, if you really want to understand, we talk about the oligarchy, we talk about the corruption, and Stephen Miller. Stephen Miller is one of the two autopans. When it comes to immigration and national security, it's all Stephen Miller. Donald Trump has only sat for about 12 security briefings, only 12, the lowest in like history. He can't even be bothered. This is the president of the United States. He doesn't sit for security briefings. He spent 25% of his time golfing to the tune of wasting our taxpayer dollars. And furthermore, we've literally had him on camera saying, when am I signing, as he's signing executive orders. All this cruelty, and Donald Trump is complicit, by the way. He's also racist, but he's outsourced it to Stephen Miller. Stephen Miller is an avowed white nationalist racist. He does not hide. He does not sugarcoat his views. There's no dog whistles. It's bullhorn 24/7. He believes in the replacement theory. He believes America must be great again by becoming white again. He wants to go back to the 19th century. He thinks the worst thing that was done in this country was the 1965 Immigration and Nationality Act, which brought Asians and Latinos to America. It's clear he's the one who gave Breitbart white nationalist talking points in the first administration. This is Stephen Miller. For him, he is a true believer. He is zealous. He is willing to burn the country down to make the country white again, folks. So this is why I think this is a big deal. Because with the Gallup poll showing a complete reversal, with people saying, I didn't vote for this shit, with ICE now being a personal Gestapo terrorizing Americans with military, and with Stephen Miller, and this is my prediction, he doesn't care about the polls. I have power. I'm going to flex power. I don't care. I'm going to get this done, or I will die trying. Now you have other people like Human Concrete Tom Homan, who said this. I want to give you two quotes, and I think it's all connected. People need to understand ICE officers and Border Patrol don't need probable cause to walk up to somebody, briefly detain them, and question them based on their physical appearance. Quote one, here's Senator Tim Scott, who married a real-life human woman that he apparently loves a lot. Quote, I want to be very clear. If we continue to see this violence against law enforcement officers, do not expect not violence, blood in the streets. Allison.
Well, first of all, Aaron Reichlin Melnick on Blue Sky has shared with us about Tom Homan. Let's go back to Mr. Dip. You would think of you before you go on TV, you would just take that shit out of your mouth, but he doesn't.
No.
He says, Aaron says, shockingly, there is some truth to what Tom Homan said. In 1975, the Supreme Court ruled that racial profiling can be used for reasonable suspicion in immigration stops. But that decision was based on demographics at the time. And in the 50 years since, courts have invalidated it as used in Latino communities. So this Supreme Court would uphold something like that. However, that's not the point. The point is it lays bare the white supremacy. I mean, who comes forward and says, we are racially profiling, whether it's allowed or not? I mean, that used to be, we're in such weird times. Well, the polls bear it out, right? But like you said, do they even care about the polls? I don't think Stephen Miller does. Like you said, autopen number one. Thing one and thing two don't give a crap about what we think. I honestly believe that they think that they're just doing what's best for us. You know, like when parents used to say, one day you'll understand, and I'm the dad and you're the kid, and this is what's best for you. It doesn't make sense now, but it will. I honestly believe that they think they're doing the right thing. Because to them, I mean, they're all eugenicists. They're all great replacement.
There you go.
So, like, of course they think this is the right thing. I just think it's stunning that they also care so little about white people because they want all of their white babies and white folks to now take the jobs so that they can earn their Medicaid. I mean, how are we just minutes away from a "work will set you free" sign over, in front of meatpacking plants? It's bonkers to me.
I I think they want to go back to the 19th century where there was the Gilded Age, where the rich white men were in power, and the rest of us were literally, like you said, like this fodder for their gilded engines, and they will eat us up, chew us up like Soylent Green. And like you mentioned, eugenicists, that's just look at them, man. Look at Elon Musk and everyone else. They always talk about productive people versus non-productive people, right? Registries that RFK wanted for autistic people, those who are useful and those who aren't useful, right? I always tell people, what was the one industry that saw a huge spike as soon as Donald Trump was elected? Private prisons. So when we have $180 billion given to ICE and enforcement, that's not just ICE agents, folks. That's also for more concentration camps and detention centers. You got to fill them up. Who are you going to fill them up with? Bunch of brown folks, a bunch of black folks, bunch of poor white folks, right? And now you have free labor. So we're going to go back to the 19th century.
And
I
child
do want
labor.
and can you tell people, because people don't keep the receipts? I tell people that in red states already they're lowering the age of people working, and they're like, "No, bro." I'm like, "Yes." They're going back on the labor laws that kept children out of factories where they were dying, and now they're lowering the age.
Yeah, well, that's part of it. That's why they are, union busting, and they refer to us as human capital stock, Waj. So they want to get all the brown people out, have nothing but white people, but all poor white people who will do all the manual labor for them and continue to line the billionaire pockets. I mean, it's we've seen it a million times in history. And right now, our wealth gap is bigger than the wealth gap in France before the revolution. Um, and I think it was Scott Galloway who said on MSNBC, "There's not there's not a lot of ways out of this when you have this big of a wealth gap. There's only a few
There's
ways
not.
out."
There's not. There's revolution. And I remember I'm old enough that someone, I don't know who said this, no taxation without representation. I'll figure it out. As we continue talking, Allison, do you mind if I bring in Mike Madrid? Mike is the Latino whisperer. He's a former Republican, but this guy, he knows, like, he's been on this Gallup poll, and he's been tracking Latino votes and voters and shifts. Can I bring him on if he accepts? All right. As I bring him on, I also want to talk about, because Mike, he was one of the co-founders of the. Sorry, friends, let me invite him. He was one of the co-founders of Lincoln Project. He also knows about the Epstein conspiracy and how the right wing radicalized their base for the last 10 years, folks. It's been going on for 10 years. I want to remind people that in the first administration, when Hillary Clinton was running, a man who was radicalized came right here in Virginia to pizza parlor with a gun and said, "Where are the kids?" So this is why when I and others have been saying, "Hey, Democrats, maybe use this Epstein controversy," and we have some. I saw Allison. You talked about this Wired piece that I haven't read. I want you to talk about that as well. But before we get into the whole Epstein of it and the fissures and cracks in MAGA, Mike, I just introduced you as the Latino Whisperer, co-founder of a Lincoln Project. Also, his nose is on. I've been following him for a while on Twitter. Because his analysis of where Latino voters were going for the past 10 years has tracked. And I saw you. You said, "I got to talk about this Gallup poll that Allison and I just talked about." And I wanted your thoughts. This is Allison Gill. I don't know if you've ever met. Allison is from
Good to meet you,
Mother She
Allison.
Wrote and the Daily Beans
Oh,
podcast.
sure. Yeah, of
Yeah, but
course.
before we go into the Epstein of it all, you've seen this Gallup poll. There's about 1,200 people joining us. Thanks for
Yeah.
joining us. For those who are joining us late and weren't with us, real quick, this Gallup poll that came out today is a stunner.
Yeah.
Complete reversal on immigration. Donald Trump is completely underwater on what was his strong suit. Mike, I wanted your analysis on this. What are we seeing?
I think you characterized it exactly right. And hi, guys. Great to be with both of you. Look, this is the backlash that, I've been waiting for. I think we've all been kind of waiting for. Like, when is it going to happen, especially on this issue? Back in January, Waj, what I said was that there wasn't going to be a winner in the immigration debate, but there's going to be a loser. And the loser is going to be the person that overplays their hand first.
Right.
And both sides have a strong propensity to overplay their hand, but nobody like Donald Trump and the Republicans on immigration. And they have completely overplayed their hand, so much so that when you ask people about immigration, it's not even viewed as much as about immigration and border security anymore. It's about constitutional rights. It's about due process. It's about militarizing our streets and cities and neighborhoods now. People do not like seeing children being torn from their mother's arms. They do not like seeing children being tear gassed in fields with, the least among us who are doing this brutal work for meager wages on a subsistence living, and realizing these are not criminals. These are not people that are harming us in any way, shape, or form. And this cruelty objective, this whole narrative about terrorizing and alligator Alcatraz and just being as inhuman as possible is seeping into not just the American public sentiment, but this is the real fascinating thing, Waj. The biggest shift in public opinion was with Republicans. Republicans are saying enough. Okay, like 91% of Democrats are saying we're opposed to this. Of course, right? You would expect that. 2/3 of independents are there, but there was an 11 to 12 point shift. I'm looking at the numbers right now. Sorry if I keep going like this because I'm looking at the numbers as we're talking. That's what created the biggest part of this shift in the American public sentiment. And here's where it gets even more profound. This is just over the last 35, 40 days.
Yep.
So it's directly correlates to all the visuals of people seeing this, not the concept of mass deportations, not the concept of criminals, violent criminals being deported. People are seeing what this really means. And the likelihood of this getting far worse is much greater than it getting better because we just increased ICE's budget by 15-fold. So this is all going to get far worse. Public sentiment is moving decisively in the wrong direction. I've been pulling on immigration for 30 years. I have never, ever seen a shift this big year to year, let alone month to month. So people are getting it. They're seeing it. Unfortunately, it took this point to get to this point for it to happen. But the American public is pushing back. They don't like it. They're gonna start getting much more vocal about it, would be my prediction.
Hey, Wash, I have found to respond to that, I found what I was initially talking about a little bit ago. It's Professor Cobb. He's the dean of Columbia Journalism School.
Yeah.
He drew
Jelani.
he drew the historical comparison with the Fugitive Slave Act to what's going on with ICE right now, and he talked about the Fugitive Slave Act bringing our country to the precipice of civil war. People hated it. And that's where he said the reason why is he said the fundamental civic unit in this nation is neighbor. And so once you start attacking our neighbors, that is what happened back when the Fugitive Slave Act was passed. And that's, I think, what we're seeing now. And that's what's being reflected in these polls.
I mean, Mike, like I said, is an expert on this. Has been doing it for 30 years. But even, I got the gray hairs, folks. I saw that poll on Gallup. I had to reread it 3 times, Mike and Allison. I'm like, no way. And then I read and then I went to the original source. I'm like, in 6 months, folks, in 6 months. And I do think he overplayed his hand. You told that to me last time, Mike, because, as we're talking about them overplaying their hands, Allison, I want to go to you before I go back to Mike. Tell people who haven't seen these horrific videos of what's happening in Ventura City and what happened when ICE visited the Puerto Rican Museum and why they were there.
Well, I'll let you speak to the Puerto Rican Museum. I've only seen the videos from what happened in Ventura. There's a legal in our state farm for cannabis there. And so they went in and it was horrifying. They raided this farm. And now MAGA is saying, mocking liberals for trying to protect our workers and our neighbors by saying, oh, they're only picking strawberries. No, they were picking weed, and trying to use that as some sort of they're criminals a thing. This was a legal operation. It wasn't an illegal grill op or anything like that. Matt Gaetz is heavily invested in this stuff in Florida. John Boehner, I think, is probably smoking a blunt right now wherever he is and running a lot of marijuana farms and cannabis farms. But they're using that now as, I guess, to try to sully the work that these folks were doing in order to justify rounding up non-criminals and terrorizing neighborhoods. It's like what they did at MacArthur Park in Los Angeles, just a show of force. They had horseback, they had a cavalry. Like, these guys had been having wet dreams about getting on horseback and scaring brown people their whole lives, and now they finally get to do it. It's terrifying. They didn't do it for any other reason than to just kind of, show what they've got, and show their force and intimidate and scare people. There were 20 kids there as part of a day camp at MacArthur Park.
Kids
So
got tear gas live on video, folks. Tear gas live on video.
So this is what...
Can I speak to that? Yeah, real quickly.
Please.
But the children I want to talk about the children aspect of this because it's very important. I'm from Ventura County. My mother used to translate for farm workers on those same grounds in the 1970s during the Farm Workers Union. That's where I'm from. The reason why there are children in that place is because these people can't afford daycare. So they literally have to take turns during break taking care of children in their cars while these people do the most brutal physical work in 115-degree weather on their knees and with stooped backs, with no water and no shade, having to try to meet production numbers. This is indentured servitude, okay? This is modern-day slavery. That's why children are there. And when they tear gas to watch these children, 7, 8, 9-year-old children, being chased while their parents are being detained and torn from them creates a life cycle of trauma for the least among us. These are not hardened criminals. These are people that are desperate to do the most meager, basic sustenance level work in horrific conditions so that we can have lettuce and strawberries. And yeah, there were cannabis operations, which is a completely legal industry in California as it is in most states now. But set that aside for a second. It was also strawberries. It was also lettuce. All of that, those grounds, all of those outside grounds where you saw canisters of tear gas being shot at by cars where there are children is because these people are living on such meager sustenance that they can't afford daycare. And the way they've built around that is when you're taking a 15 or 20-minute break, you go and monitor the children so that there's always an adult with them. That's why that happens.
I really appreciate that backstory, Mike. I think most Americans don't know that. And if you wait a second, humanize the immigrant story. If you wait a second, tell their narratives and don't just jump on the bandwagon and crush them because you're too afraid of being seen as weak on national security and immigration. I think more and more people will be like, oh my God, that's horrifying. That's horrifying that they work under these conditions. These people are heroic because I've said it before, I'll say it again. I'm going to speak for all of us. No matter how I've been poor, folks. I was poor from 21 to 32, like really poor. Read about it in my book. But even then, when I was really desperate and you said, go in the scorching sun and pick fruits and vegetables, I'd be like, you know what? I'll learn how to code. I'll figure something out. Even then, Allison and Mike, I'd be like, I won't do that. These are the folks who do the work that no poor white MAGA voter would ever do. Even if they were on their deathbed, they wouldn't do it. This is the work that they do. And they do it in such backbreaking conditions. And now we have videos of their children being tear gassed. And, if you can't stomach it, see the video. If you can't, just listen to us, take our word for it. People crying. And you're sitting there thinking like, this is America. This is Stephen Miller's America. And folks, ICE is showing up, as we've been saying for a while, at preschools, at elementary schools. And you saw ICE agents caught on video. I don't know if you saw this video that went slightly viral last week, urinating just out of cruelty at a playground, just for no reason, just decided to urinate at a playground. So I believe this type of cruelty is going to animate a resistance. And I want to ask you, before we talk about Epstein, Mike and Allison, you're already seeing civil disobedience. I don't know if you're seeing cars not move. You're seeing people say F you. You're seeing Haitians. I don't know if you saw that video of Haitians when the ICE agents came. Yep. The Haitian community is like, you roll up. And they literally said, no, we got our own. My fear is connecting the dots, Mike, because Allison and I were also talking about how Tom Homan, Scott Miller, with this $180 billion infusion to the Gestapo, they're itching for violence. They're itching. There's no restraints anymore. So, Allison, I'll go to you before I go to Mike. I see escalation already happening. And then I see a rationalization for crackdown.
That's exactly it. That's the tightrope everybody's walking, right? And I just want to, before I talk a little bit more about that, Mike and Waj, I just want to clarify when I mentioned the children, I was talking about MacArthur Park. I wasn't questioning why there were children in Ventura.
Yeah.
And
we all got that.
Yeah, okay. I just want to be clear. I wasn't like, who brought their children?
No,
obviously.
no.
I don't think any of us took that at all. But thank you for
Okay, and
clarifying.
thank you for that background, Mike. You're from there, you know all about it and everything that's going on there. Now, as far as the escalation goes, that's where I'm like, what's the right answer? Because we do see a lot of people pushing back. We do see some stuff getting thrown. And in my head, I'm like, that's exactly what they want. Then they can turn around and make, excuse me, make propaganda videos out of it and be like, look, they're violent toward us. They're blah, blah, blah. We need the Insurrection Act. We need posse comitatus, blah, whatever it is. We need to escalate this and declare martial law and use it as fuel for giving the president even more emergency powers than he's usurping for himself right now. So that was actually going to be my question to y'all and what you think, because what is the right way to resist the Gestapo without playing into what they want us to do precisely? Does that make sense as a question?
Yeah, absolutely. Mike.
Well, I mean, look, we are at the point right now at this moment in American history where the best thing that we can do is to protest. But peaceful protest is absolutely critical. And the danger, of course, is the opposition gotten sophisticated enough to kind of foment violence, not only instigate it. There is no reason to be landing helicopters in the field of Camarillo. There's no reason to be bringing 30 militarized vehicles into these fields, and it looks like the desert, in Iraq, the invasion. And again, this is going to expand dramatically in the next couple of weeks as more and more dollars come online to build out this domestic military infrastructure, right? ICE is going to have a larger budget than the U.S. Marine Corps. The reason is because they are trying to send a message of intimidation to the opposition. And the key, again, is to show popular opposition to what is happening in a peaceful paradigm, in a peaceful way. And again, all we can do is control ourselves and work to influence those around us. But now is that time. This is that moment in history. This is that time for choosing. I know a lot of us on this call, a lot of us on this discussion, and certainly, the three of us have been engaged in this fight for a very long time. But you're going to start seeing these numbers in these polls. They're telling us that people that have otherwise been less engaged are tuned in now. People are seeing it. So reach out to your friends, reach out to your community, let people know that aren't as political, visit with them again, because I guarantee you're going to see a change in sentiment, and help them get engaged, help elevate their voice, help amplify them as peacefully as possible. But we've got to use the tools that we have, because if we don't, every day will get more difficult. Every day gets harder as they start to ramp up. These numbers show that by a wide swath, Americans do not like what is happening, and they're ready to start pushing back.
And he's underwater on everything, and now he's underwater on his one strong suit, and he's deeply underwater. That this Gallup poll has been just shocking to me. And there's three issues now that have completely gone 180 on him, and they're signature to MAGA, which is why I think I agree with you and Mike, Allison, that we need to learn from our ancestors in the past. We need to learn from Black people in particular, the civil disobedience model. Even as you're being cracked, even as you're being beaten, they realized that violent response would only cause more escalation, and that mass civil disobedience and mass protests. And also, they were very savvy. They realized when the world would see the cruelty of white supremacy, right? The water cannons and the dogs that switched up people. They're like, wait, easy there, right? So it's very hard, though, because we have more guns than people in the United States of America. And I am afraid we're going to see more Luigi Mangionis and Vance Bolters. That is my fear, because, again, this is America. More guns than people. Number one killer of children and teens is gun violence, folks. But the three issues in the past week where it's completely flipped for Donald Trump. Immigration, as of today, shocking. The numbers have come out on the billionaire bill from hell. I mean, the best poll for Donald Trump, the best poll was -19. It's around -25 for most people, -45 for independent folks. And this is without the bill's impacts even hitting. Imagine when it hits, folks. Imagine when these cuts come. It's already -25 on his signature legislation, right? And then the third story that I have said for a while is a major crack up in MAGA, because I'm a masochist who has followed MAGA conspiracy theories. And Mike, you know this. You know the Republicans, and Allison, you've been following this, and you know the latest story. I want to go to you first because there's a Wired story that came out an hour ago that I was unable to read that you read. MAGA radicalized their base, folks, for 10 years, even before Epstein. QAnon and the deep state and the Epstein files all promote this theory that there's a Jewish cabal using people of color and liberals in an international sex trafficking ring to kidnap, possess, and assault and abuse children. I'm not making this up. If you disagree with me or you think I'm being outlandish here, I take you back 10 years when Clinton was running for president and a man showed up right here in Virginia, 20 minutes. I've been at this pizza parlor where they also play ping pong. He shows up with a gun. He says, "Where are the kids?" And like, "What are you talking about?" He goes, Clinton, the liberals are keeping kids in the dungeon for their sex trafficking operation. They're like, "What?" He wasn't crazy. He got radicalized by right-wing media. That then evolved, rather say devolved, to QAnon, which helped radicalize Ashley Babbitt, the deep state replacement theory, and then the granddaddy of them all that connects it together, the Epstein files. And Dan Bongino and Pam Bondi and Kash Patel radicalized their base with this red meat and these conspiracy theories. And to paraphrase Tropic Thunder, never go full conspiracy theorist. And they did. And now the deep state that they assaulted, they're part of the deep state. And they made these promises, Allison and Mike, that we're going to release the files and we're going to show you that's Bill Clinton and Bill Gates and we have it. And they had the binders. Remember the binders, folks? I'm keeping all the receipts. They brought Laura Loomer and Cernovich and all these freaks and they came out with these binders, but they never told us what is the binders. And Pam Bondi says, "I have the Epstein files on my desk." And, shocking. A complete 180. Epstein killed himself. And that 1 minute that's deleted from the video, don't worry about it. And even Donald Trump did something wild earlier this week where Pam Bondi was asked during a cabinet hearing about the Epstein files. He interrupted and said, "Why are we still talking about this? There's more important stuff." And I'm like, now I'm interested. Why are you so concerned, right? And then this Wired article just came out. So that was just for those who haven't followed. I wanted to give you a quick cliff notes. But then talk to us about the Wired article that just came out, Allison, before I go to Mike.
Yeah, sure. It says the DOJ released nearly 11 hours of what it described. The DOJ said this is full raw surveillance footage from a camera positioned inside the jail. But metadata embedded in the video and analyzed by Wired and independent video forensics experts shows that rather than being direct exports from the prison surveillance system, the footage was modified, likely using the professional editing tool Adobe Premiere Pro. Experts caution it's unclear what was changed and that the metadata doesn't prove deceptive manipulation. The video may have simply been processed for public release using the available software with no modifications beyond stitching two clips together. But the absence of a clear explanation for the processing of the file, if you are talking about, if you're going to release videos about the biggest conspiracy theory in MAGA history, and you're not going to explain why the metadata shows that the video is not the raw files you are promising, you should probably come correct with that and say, "Hey, first of all, there's a missing minute because we switched the thing every night at midnight. And second of all, we did pull this out and reprocess it and stitch it here and cut off a third of the screen, just so you know." But to do that without that explanation, they say in a case already clouded by suspicion, the ambiguity surrounding how the file was processed is likely to provide fresh fodder for conspiracy theorists. So that's what Wired came out with today. And then you could talk about what Axios said. There was a big fight because they're all trying to decide who's going to take the blame for this. Bongino left town for a day. People thought he quit the FBI. If only.
I have more questions than answers. This is like the most glorious example of the Streisand effect. And what Allison was talking about 2 hours ago, Axios has a scoop. FBI Deputy Director, I want to throw up in my mouth. I can't believe I'm about to say this. FBI Deputy Director Dan Bongino. This is what happens when the stupidest people on earth get power, folks. Took a day off from work after a White House clash with Pam Bondi over the handling of the Epstein files. 4 sources familiar with the conflict told Axios. Mike, this is delicious.
It is delicious, and it's different than what we have seen in the past. This is not an ideological split on the big, beautiful bill trying to round up votes. This is not a difference of opinion on the Middle East or Ukraine and Russia. This is foundationally different. And as Allison just accurately pointed out, the reason is this is the granddaddy of them all, conspiracy theory, right? This is what connects. This is the glue that holds it all together. The whole predicate for why the cult stays together is because they have so demonized people on what is the worst possible thing a human being can be, which is a child pedophile, sex trafficker. That's what they've turned the Democrats out to be. And they have sold this idea that there's some sort of a list out there. And once they got into power, they were going to open up the whole thing, and it was going to lead the pearly gates would open, and a new golden age of America would be dawned, because we would see all the evil and the demonic, whatever nonsense you've bought into, going down all these rabbit holes over the course of the past 10 years. And then, to your point, Waj, which is this: as long as there are more questions than answers, this conspiracy theory will remain. And there is no way that they can actually put anything out anymore that's going to satiate all of the questions that are there. What does that mean? It means that you now have a faction inside MAGA world where most of these folks, by the way, are pissed off and upset and pointing fingers at Donald Trump himself and the three enablers: Bondi, Patel, Bongino. So they're fighting amongst themselves, but even if Bongino wins or Bondi wins, what are they going to do? They can't produce anything because Donald Trump was never, ever, ever going to allow it. And that creates, I think, the most interesting scenario, which is one of the reasons why this will not go away. And there are many reasons why. But when you have Elon Musk, who has one of the largest right-wing platforms, with all the motive in the world and hundreds of millions of dollars at his disposal, he is now starting to say things like Steve Bannon's in the Epstein files. Anybody who defends the current regime's inability or lack of desire to release everything and satiate everybody is now going to be accused of being a protector of the deep state. You might as well be hanging out with the Clintons out in Martha's Vineyard. Like, you're going to be that bad and that evil. That's the attack that's coming, and that's why this is not resolvable. This is going to last probably for a decade, maybe as long as the JFK conspiracy theory, only much more heated and with the most wealthy man in the world fueling and driving that sentiment. And the only thing they can do is defend. And if you're defending, you're not just defending Trump anymore, you're defending Jeffrey Epstein. So this is a cataclysmic divide.
I'm so glad you said that, because you follow the right wing, and I've been following them as well. And I think people who aren't masochists like us three, and who don't wade in the swamps of this freaking right wing conspiratorial mindset, which is so disgusting. This is it. This is the thread that ties it all together. And now they think that everyone's part of the conspiracy. You got Roseanne coming out. You got Alex Jones crying in his car. You got Tucker Carlson coming out. You got Andrew Schultz openly saying, "I didn't vote for this. I wanted answers." Those are all the really mediocre MAGA comedians, right? That rode MAGA to wealth with the Joe Rogan crew, right? It's a whole bunch of them publicly coming out, right? They're not bearing this for the sake of Donald Trump. And the reason why we know that Donald Trump doesn't want this out is because Epstein said that his closest friend was Donald Trump. And we have videos of them partying together and quotes from Donald Trump. So if those, and then you have Dershowitz. How can I forget Dershowitz? Dershowitz came out yesterday and he says, "Release the files. It'll prove that I am not on it and I know who's on it." And then Sean Spicer said, "Who's on it?" He goes, "Politicians and celebrities. Release the files." So folks, this is why it'll never get released. And to quote Ken Watanabe from Godzilla, let them fight. Let them eat themselves. My final question to both of you, I kept you longer than I thought. Thank you so much, Allison and Mike. We have about 1,600 people watching. For those who are tuning in a bit late, we'll have this all up on our Substacks. It's a third conversation. We're talking about the latest Gallup poll that is a complete reversal on immigration, where people are finally fighting for immigrants. We talked about the Epstein files. We talk about how Donald Trump and Stephen Miller will use the dissent to crack down. I think he's not going to leave. I hope I'm wrong. But I want you all to give advice to, I don't know, maybe an opposition party where, in my opinion, 3 gifts have been handed to them. A deeply unpopular, big, beautiful bill from hell. Now, as a result of this Gallup poll, a deeply unpopular issue of immigration and ICE being funded, like Mike said, to the tune of $180 billion as a result of that bill terrorizing Americans. And if I want to be cynical, and I do, and I want to play cutthroat, and I do, the Epstein files. Allison, you first. If there was an opposition party, I don't know, what advice would you give them?
As a member of the opposition party, I no longer rely on anyone else or wait on anyone else to do my work for me. I'm going to pick it up and run with it. And I recommend that everybody else that is a member of this society picks it up and runs with it, because we are the heroes that we've been waiting for. We are the leadership of the opposition party. We are the new corporate media as citizen journalists. So I don't wait around for anybody to do anything for me anymore. I do it myself.
I love it. Mike, what would you say? What would you recommend?
Just tactically, I think you have to remember, I think that the Democrats and the opposition party has been on defense and been in a haze for so many months. The polling is now showing that the only way is forward. It is an offensive position. There's more than enough attack points. But what I will say is this. I think Waj is exactly correct. History, the issues matrix, the turnout model, the economic direction of the country is all heading towards what should be a very strong year for the opposition party, for Democrats. What I don't want Democrats to do is miss the opportunity to recognize that it is already developing a more proactive economic agenda. And here's what I mean by that. Whether you are with Zoran Mamdani or Ruben Gallego, I want you to understand it's not an either or proposition. Both of these candidates from both ends of the party spectrum brought working class voters back, brought voters of color back into the fold because they were focused on economics. It's not ideological. It's just a very human need to have this be prioritized as an issue. And if you focus on that issue, along with Republicans completely destroying themselves, that's when you start moving on offense. Quit attacking each other. Focus on what matters. Move offensively. March down the hill and start attacking politically. That's what's going to make all the difference at this moment in time.
Almost as if you're talking about an economic populist message that is against the billionaires and the elite and is rallying the majority for fairness. You talk crazy, Mike.
I know.
Actually, I have to indulge you because I got both of you here, and because everything goes full circle, it reveals the cruelty of MAGA and Stephen Miller and their endgame. And I'm going to go see Superman tonight with my family. This manufactured outrage over Superman, who, by the way, folks, for those who don't follow comic books, Superman is literally a fictional character and an alien whose parents sent him to Earth to be a refugee, an undocumented immigrant, you would say, who was then protected by the Rust Belt, Kansas voter, Ma and Pa Kent, who decided to protect him and raise him, instill him with good values. And Superman then decides, with his superhuman strength, not to be cruel and rule people and crush them, but instead fight for the marginalized and the weak against an evil billionaire. Huh. Allison and Mike, your thoughts on Superman, the great Superman controversy of Superman being woke that is now dominating right-wing media for this past week.
I'm sorry, Waj. I'm just super confused about whose side I'm supposed to be on. Like, I watched Superman. I'm not sure who to root for. I watched, Star Wars. I'm not sure who the bad guys are, really. I'm kidding, of course. The only time I've ever been confused about a protagonist and an antagonist is in the director's cut of Blade Runner, where I was like, the replicants just want to survive. But I mean, it's super ridiculous to me that anybody is confused about Star Wars, Star Trek, Superman, 100% of awesome art that's come out in the last 100 years, and it isn't against the billionaire ruling class jerkhole white supremacist. I have a lot of other colorful language that I could use, but I don't understand. I don't get it.
I think, and with this, Mike, I'll give it to you, but coinciding with this Gallup poll today, this attack on Superman, I said this yesterday. I think the Superman attack, and to me, tell me if I'm overreading it. We're seeing a shift. I said, I think we're going to see a shift because Republicans have used pop culture. Andrew Breitbart said politics is downstream from culture, which I think is very astute. But I think overplaying their hand, going against Superman because he's kind, because he is literally an undocumented immigrant, an alien, a man who went against the billionaires, and creating this as their latest distraction / culture war. I was predicting that Superman would be embraced. I think the movie's going to be a hit. I'm going to see it tonight. And then you saw the Gallup poll that came out today on immigrants. And I said, I think that you're going to see a small little pivot here, maybe a big pivot, where people are said, I'm done. I'm done. And you're going to see the majority take back their narrative in pop culture. But that's just me. And then I was rewarded with this amazing Gallup poll today. Mike.
Yeah, look, I think that was beautifully put. And let me say this, kind of like Winston Churchill said, you can always count on Americans to do the right thing after they've exhausted all other options, right? but let's remember something about Superman also. And I love how beautifully and eloquently you put that narrative of who he is. He stands for truth, justice, and the American way. And what that means is there's a kindness, there's an empathy. He defends the weakest among us. That is the American way that we need to fight for. We need to embrace that. Don't cede to the propagandists with screaming eagles and, bare-chested Donald Trump on a tank like that's Americana. Like, we are the people that represent America in its truest, best, most future-oriented form. America will never get to the end of being truly great. It's a continual experiment to fight for a bigger seat at the table for more and more people. That is what America is. That's what Superman is. This alien who came, saw America, was raised by good salted people of Earth, and just does the right thing when nobody else will or can. Be Superman. Be that person. That's the American way. That's what I think we're fighting for. And I think that's why, frankly, they're so pissed off at him.
Yeah, he chooses, despite being the most powerful being on earth, he chooses to be humble. He chooses to be kind. He chooses to be
Empathy.
selfless. And I want to remind people, Superman was created by two Jewish immigrants, sons of refugees, who, by the way, had Superman fighting fascists. This is who Superman has always been from 1938 to now, folks.
Oh, I
If you
remember
didn't like it,
Superman battles the Clan of the Burning Cross, where they actually got Superman to completely stop and take away recruitment of the KKK in the northern states because of how weird they were. That was why the weird message worked so well. But Waj, Mike, I've got some good news for you before I get out of here. I'm also might just run out of battery. The Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, which had previously put a pause or turned down Gavin Newsom's lawsuit to stop the National Guard in Los Angeles, the court itself has now, there were two Trump appointees on that 3-person panel that did that. The court itself has now asked for a rehearing en banc. The court itself seems like it wants to reconsider its decision to do
Wow.
this. So that's
we
great
got to take
news.
the wins where we can, and we'll end on a positive note. And I kept Mike and Allison much longer, and I'd even tell Mike I wanted to invite him. I just emailed him, and he said, sure. And Allison, I'm like, we'll talk about something. And we did. We found a way to talk about it. Allison and Mike, as we let you go, shamelessly promote yourselves.
Allison, I'm going to shamelessly promote Allison if I can. I think the country's been following her for so long. I've been such a big fan. It's an honor to be on with you. You've got a great brain, and you were just fearless and fierce. And thank you for all of that, your work, because you're right there at the tip of the spear. You're just doing great work. So I've been a big fan, a champion of yours. Make sure that she's in your queue if you're not following her on a daily basis.
Oh my gosh, Mike, thank you. I'm going to shamelessly promote Waj. You really need to subscribe and follow the Left Hook and follow him everywhere on social media and get his book if you haven't yet. It's never going to not be relevant. It's right
Going
behind
back
him
to
there.
where it came from.
And it makes a really great gift for the holidays. So I like to buy books all year round from my small local stores and put them around in little free libraries and give them to all my friends during the holidays. So make sure you check that out. And I'm going to shamelessly plug you since Mike plugged me.
And Allison is the maven, social media maven of Mother She Wrote, but she also has a fantastic daily politics podcast with swear words, the Daily Beans podcast. So listen to her on the Daily Beans and also subscribe to Mother She Wrote. And Mike, I've called them the Latino Whisperer. If you need to know literally what the Latinos, that diverse group, and by the way, a group you cannot ignore anymore, their trends, and really understands these communities and these issues of immigration. And you know his history now. I did not know that Mike grew up in Ventura County. Listen to Mike. He's the co-founder of the Lincoln Project. And he knows conservative movement. Never Trumper. But he keeps that fair and balanced. And I find that to get a really good, keen analysis on these issues that so many people mess up on immigration, on Latino communities. Mike is the guy, and he has a Substack that you all should subscribe to. Folks, thank you so much for taking the time. Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Allison. This will be up in about an hour for the 1,700 who joined us. Enjoy yourselves. Take care. And I will end on really good news. Monday is my daughter's 9th birthday. Earlier this week, we found out that she has survived her 5-year mark. She's a stage 4 cancer survivor. So now she's officially moved to being a cancer survivor. She's inshallah turning 9, and we're having a massive water balloon fight. And the reason she's alive is because we had an anonymous at the time, liver donor, step up for a girl he had never met. He just matched up with her, gave her a piece of her liver. So far, she's safe, she's healthy, she's a diva. Her grandparents, my parents are visiting, and she's going to Ulta to get makeup because this is my life now. So speaking about Supermen, we all have superpowers. Kindness is a superpower. Empathy is a superpower. And her liver donor, Sean Zahir, is coming with his family and his 2 daughters to the water balloon fight. So there's multiple ways to be a superhero. Not all heroes wear capes, folks. And at the very least, we can be kind. We can be empathetic. And I'll end with this. At the very least, we can choose not to be a fascist. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Allison. Take care.
Thanks, guys.